Hey Music City, Joe Crosby here. I'm excited about today's episode because it's a little bit different than what we've done in the past. I didn't speak with a leader of a nonprofit, but I found a great company based in Nashville who is working to help donors connect with more nonprofits throughout the area. My guest today is Nirant Gupta, the Chief Product Officer of Generous, a company making it easier for donors to spread their generosity through personalized giving recommendations, matching donations, cause-based giving bundles, and emergency response needs. They're also helping our local nonprofits by offering more exposure to smaller organizations who may not have the brand awareness of the larger and more well-known companies. Generous is also partnered with local and national corporations to provide matching donations to any donation coming through the Generous platform. I hope you enjoy this episode, and I would be more than grateful if you would like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. And be sure to share your favorite episode with anyone you think would enjoy listening. Now on to the show.
We're getting to a place where it feels like America is irreparably fractured. Like everyone feels very disconnected and someone else is on the other side. But to me, it seems like nonprofits are a place where people can come together and put that stuff aside and actually just care about the community. Like when I'm volunteering at the food bank, I have no idea how the people around me voted, nor do I really care. We're, helping prepare the meals and box up goods and doing something directly for the community. And it's something where, you can come together and regardless of, policy and stuff happening at the state and local and national levels, you can say, today I did a good thing. And that's, something really satisfying. So being able to help people discover that and find that in their communities and in their lives, especially when it feels like there's so much conflict outside of it, is just really good to do.
Welcome to Music City Giving, a show about the unsung leaders and volunteers behind Nashville's nonprofits, foundations, and charitable organizations. I'm Joe Crosby, and today I'm joined by Nirant Gupta, Chief Product Officer at Generous.
Generous is a marketplace for nonprofits, so we want to help people find and discover great nonprofits in their community doing work that they might care about or really be interested in, and then help them support those nonprofit organizations. Right now, that support is through donations, and so, on the one hand, on the discovery, it's figuring out, okay, if you're someone who lives in Nashville and is interested in these issue areas, or you live in Berry Hill and you want to know who's doing affordable housing stuff around in that area, we want to help you find those organizations. So you can say, oh gosh, I didn't know this thing was around the corner from my house.
Yeah, sure,
and they're doing amazing work in this community. That was my story. I lived on Shelby Avenue here in East Nashville. Every day I would drive by the Martha O'Brien Center for 3 years. Mm-hmm. I had no idea that the Martha O'Brien Center was right there.
And it's been here for decades.
It's one of, I think it is either the oldest or one of the few oldest nonprofits in all of Nashville. They've been around for over 100 years. Yeah. And I literally, you get on the highway, you're driving by the Martha O'Brien Center every day. And I had no idea it existed. And then you find out about it and the work that they're doing and some of their after school programs and how they're supporting, Stratford High School and they have a food pantry within the Martha O'Brien Center, all this stuff that I had no idea. And I literally lived less than a mile away.
Yeah.
So, number one is how do we help people discover and find out about the great work in their community? I think similar to the inspiration for your podcast.
Absolutely.
And then we want to say, okay, now, how can we help people support those organizations and become part of their impact?
Sure, absolutely. The one thing that stuck out to me, I'd never seen this concept. It might be something that exists, but the concept of the bundled giving option. So where did that come from? Where did that idea come from?
Yeah, I think maybe it's a bit of a millennial take on how to do donations, but I think we were really lucky to think as a startup thinking about. If we were coming at the nonprofit donations world from a donor perspective with a blank slate, how might we attack it? And certainly you want to support certain organizations. There will be issues that matter more to you or organizations you have a friend who works at or some type of personal connection with. But, if you give, let's imagine that there's a homeless person in Nashville. Nashville is unfortunately a reasonably sized homeless community. Yep. Of course, you want to give them a hot meal and make sure that they're well fed, and so support the Nashville Food Project, and Second Harvest Food Bank. But when they leave the food bank, if they don't have a place to sleep or warm clothes or medicine, you've helped them for a moment, but how can we really uplift these people and give them opportunities that they otherwise wouldn't have? So the idea around bundling is to say, look, instead of having to do the research and figure out all the organizations doing homeless support and the different categories that there might be, and instead of having to go to 5 different nonprofit websites and enter your credit card information into 5 different times and be on 5 different mailing lists and all that stuff, we can help you, in one place say, this is the story that I'm supporting, this is the narrative, this is the type of people, and here's how I can help them holistically.
Absolutely. And that does tie in. You said millennial. That makes perfect sense for our generation. You think of kind of the previous generations. They have their check. They give their check to their charity each year or each quarter or whatever. Whereas we have the mindset of, I want to change the world. I want to do as much as I can for everyone, and that allows you to spread that out in an easier manner. So,
and I think what you've seen, if you observe the space, places like GoFundMe and a lot of these crowdsourcing peer-to-peer networks are where a lot of, the nonprofit donation sector is a $400 billion sector. It's not going away, and it's massive. 400, it's crazy. It's like in the 2016 presidential election, one of the most expensive presidential elections ever.
Yep.
I think in that year, $3 or so billion was spent.
Wow.
Versus $400 every year going to nonprofit. It's a completely different scale.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of the peer-to-peer crowdfunding stuff, and I think it's because a lot of folks really want to support individuals and they want to support the stories. It's sad that in America people need to go get their medical debt paid on GoFundMe, but when you see, my father was in such and such accident, the hospital bills are this, we can't really afford it. Can you guys come help me? And again, I think that's kind of the idea of the bundle. It's nonprofits are very important and huge conduits of good work in their communities, but for a lot of people it's the relationship they want it to be with the recipient of the nonprofit's good work.
Absolutely. Yep.
And so being able to tie a narrative around, look, that homeless person, they're going to come in and get a hot meal, and then they're going to have a place to sleep, and then they're going to get their flu vaccine for the year so they don't get ill, and they'll be able to do some job training and workforce development so they can find a job and not be in that situation next holiday season. That's a narrative you can really wrap your head around, and rather than giving money directly to someone on GoFundMe where it's there's a lot of fraud and a bunch of stuff with that, you can actually support those nonprofits who have figured out models and impact models that work at scale.
And I guess related to, again, kind of going back to, I give my check each year, are you seeing any, I don't want to say pushback, but is there any, hesitance of nonprofits to get on board where, they know it's going to be split between them and others, or are they just on board? Does it make sense to them?
Yeah, I think, for nonprofits, if we can help them find new donors and new dollars, anything that helps is a good thing.
Any dollar counts. It helps.
Anything that helps. And, when those, so sometimes people from their own list might say, oh, I want to support, this bundle. They might not have made that donation at that moment to that organization. They may make it in addition to that organization.
Yep.
But there's also a lot of folks who they don't know who get to come in and say, oh, gosh, I didn't even, for example, the homeless issue. We had the Nashville Food Project in our Nashville holiday bundle around this theme. If my, and so the Nashville Food Project is in there. So if my core issue was prison rehabilitation, I would never have heard of the Nashville Food Project.
Sure.
But I'm able to come in and say, oh, look how this whole puzzle is fitting together. Let me support that. And then when donors come in through the site and make their donations, they can say, and by the way, also share my information with this organization. They can opt into that so that nonprofits can grow their lists as well.
Sure, and I guess that's part of the process as well. Is when I get on and register as a donor, I'm selecting categories that I'm interested in. I guess on the nonprofit side, are they kind of setting up and saying, we would make sense to be involved with these specific other nonprofits, or is that kind of something y'all are making that call on?
It's something that we do more of. If nonprofits wanted to say, hey, the 3 of us are working together on this thing, if we can create a vehicle for people to fund all 3 in one shot, that'd be great. We'd definitely be open to it. But right now we've sort of been spinning them up and creating them. And
gotcha.
And actually, it's an interesting phenomena, right? I think in some people who don't work in the sector may not be aware, but the nonprofit sector can be somewhat competitive with one another. You're
I'm sure.
often competing for...
Well, there's only so many dollars in the system.
There's only so many dollars,
absolutely.
exactly. And so what was great is, around the holidays when we had our Nashville Holiday Bundle, we had 5 organizations in it, and they were all sharing on social media, hey, we're grouped together with these other 4. Go here and check it out, which it sounds like a small thing, but is kind of amazing to say, like, hey, my social channel, like, go check out this new thing. And we think it's exciting. It's a new way for
a community between those organizations. So yeah, exactly. I guess this will go a little more personal towards you. So
sure.
As far as Generous, and I don't know the the kind of origin of who started it, who had the idea, but what kind of pulled you into the idea of Generous in the company?
Sure. Yeah, I think I've always been, I don't know, you could call it like a do-gooder, I suppose, and someone who's been fascinated with technology. So I've done work in political campaigns and in government. But then my first job out of college was working at a business consulting company in San Francisco, where, and this was back in 2011, 2012, 2013, when I think, Uber had just rolled out in San Francisco. I remember when we, the big thing was, it's such a pain to get a cab, and the drivers lie to you about their credit card machines being down and stuff like that. It was just like a miracle. So, you saw how technology was really exploding and making things so much easier. So did the corporate thing for a little bit, and then was, so intellectually interested in the work, not so much, what impact is it having? And I sort of need to feel that for me to get up and excited about something. So sure. Got the opportunity to move over to the Gates Foundation, where I worked on their financial services team. And it's really about how having access to banking and financial services is a hugely life-enhancing and life-improving factor for the poorest of the poor around the world. We're talking folks who are less than $2 a day in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. And that is all technology. The dominant banking technology is through mobile phone. It's imagine Venmo, but on a 2G dumb phone. That kind of, but for a lot of people, that's a miracle. Being able to send money across the country, being able to pay their bills. And so getting really into how technology can be used as a big way to enact social good and to help people improve their lives. And technology on the interesting stuff on the business side, and then helping nonprofits, it seemed like a good combination.
Absolutely. Speaking of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, that's obviously a massive foundation. They've got their hand in every sector. I went on their site yesterday. They have you go to the about them. It's 50 or so sectors that they got their hands in. So what ideas from that experience, have you kind of brought with you, either it doesn't have to be really incorporated into Generous, but just, you as a person or into Generous as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's probably a couple things. One is that there's a quote that you're sort of drilled into you in onboarding, which is, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. And I think definitely important for the Gates Foundation, where it's going to sound like I'm being too dismissive, but the Gates Foundation doesn't do any real quote unquote work. They are funders of people who do the work, and that's known, right? The Gates Foundation is a grant maker.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not on the ground helping people. They're not giving vaccines to people. They're helping fund the people, which is super important, right? But if you want to go far and have a big impact, you have to have the right partners and help support them and understand how their organizations work and where your organization can mold in to help lift them up. And I think for us at Generous, so much, we don't view ourselves as, I think the people who come to the company come because they care about the world and want to help improve it. But we're not the ones doing the life-changing work on the ground. We're helping the people who are doing the life-changing work on the ground. We're helping Thistle Farms and the Nashville Food Project and the Shade Tree Clinic at Vanderbilt. But I'm not delivering that. My girlfriend, actually, she's a medical student at Vanderbilt. Mm-hmm. She helps with their low-income vaccination program through the Shade Tree Clinic. She's going, and volunteering with a bunch of organizations. She's going under the Jefferson Street Bridge every once in a while to give flu vaccines to homeless people.
Wow.
Like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But I can, and so I think that's one part. So, there are different players in the ecosystem that can be supported, but finding ways to partner and help those folks is super important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I would say another thing took away that kind of feeds into the bundle thing is what you were talking about. That you go on the website, there's 50 different things they're supporting, and it's because they have the capacity to actually research what it takes in those 50 different cases. So if the Gates Foundation, let's say that they cure malaria tomorrow, would be amazing, but the people in malaria endemic regions can get a lot of other diseases, or HIV, AIDS, and tuberculosis, and all those other things. So yes, you can save people from malaria, but if they're going to, contract one of those diseases, how can we help this population,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
And so they get to take a holistic view where we're not just curing malaria and helping people with that, but we're helping with these other diseases. And once we've as we help people with diseases, we're helping them with agriculture and food production and financial services and clean drinking water. And being able to take that holistic view and say, we don't just want to solve this one piece. We want to solve it all and work with partners and go together with them for that broad vision. I think that's really inspirational and something we are attempting to build here with a lot of the nonprofits and how people can support them in the U.S.
Absolutely, yeah. So I guess kind of taking off on that, talking about your team, just kind of looking at the bios of everybody, it's pretty diverse. Looks like pretty diverse team. People from the healthcare sector. People it looked like they've worked in like policy in Washington, high level IT tech pros. It also kind of looks like there's just an overall entrepreneurial mindset. So nonprofits, a lot of them aren't the Goodwills. They're the ones that are 1 to 2 people running them. They kind of run a small business. They're kind of running a startup, so in small budgets, so what kind of, as your team of entrepreneurs and, the generous technology, what is that going to kind of bring to the table that's going to, maybe, help change the course of these smaller nonprofits? We've kind of already talked about it, but,
Yeah. Well, it's a fantastic question. And actually, so since we launched, we've had dozens and dozens of nonprofits of all sizes, but actually a lot of these really small ones who've reached out to us and said, how can we work with you guys? How can we get a page on Generous? How can we help people donate? Because to your point, it's 1 or 2 people, and often it's not their full-time job.
Absolutely, yeah.
But they're doing important work and are helping people, and so. And often at the start, it's little more than a Facebook page they might have, maybe a landing page on a website. So some things that we can do to help with them. One is, import them into the website and have them be one of the organizations that gets shown to people for whom they're relevant. And the other is let people donate to that organization through the Generous platform. And so if you're an organization, you maybe haven't set up your own secure donations platform and your credit card processing and all that stuff, anyone can donate to any nonprofit through Generous. So we help them with that and then create just a really clean, professional web landing page for them and their potential donors and supporters.
Okay, cool. I guess another thing I noticed about your work history, you have some experience kind of in the education sector. Obviously, a lot of nonprofits are they're kind of married to that education. The more we can educate people, the better off they're going to be. It looks like you were a substitute teacher. You went on to create an app to help people find tutors. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So as far as your relationship with education, how is that kind of relevant? How do you see that that's relevant to your work in the nonprofit as well?
Yeah, great question. And education is one of those things where everyone had one. So for everyone, it's immediately personally relatable. Not everyone's experienced hunger issues, but everyone went to school. And so folks can really wrap their heads around and say, okay, I get why education is important. The company was called Teacher Finder. It's since rebranded as Tutor Up. I'm still on the board of it. It's operating and actually doing reasonably well. But, the idea there and something that we tried to bring to Generous is, again, how can technology help these different actors find one another? So in Generous, it's a marketplace for nonprofits. How do we help donors find nonprofits and have them discover and transact with one another? Tutor Up was, how can we help teachers who are looking for tutoring jobs and parents who are looking for great tutors for their kids find one another and transact with one another. So it's this idea that how can we create marketplaces that are curated for individuals? On the education side with Tutor Up, what we did, and just a lot, I mean, I'm lucky enough to be friends with a lot of education leaders around Nashville, and it's shocking. It's something like a third of teachers work second jobs during the school year to supplement their incomes because teacher pay is so paltry and student loans are so onerous.
Yep.
And, rather than driving Ubers or working the counter at Macy's, can we help you guys actually get paid for a specialized skill that you have in tutoring? And for parents, rather than hiring some random person off the street, hire someone who's background checked and fingerprinted by the state government, who knows your kid's curriculum and is trained to work with students of different learning styles and different teaching methods. And so being able to, help those folks match up is really important. We, before I stepped down as CEO, we had expanded to 13 different cities, had over 2,000 teachers on the platform, wow. 250,000, like just really great stuff going on there. And the new leadership is taking it in a really strong direction. So still involved with that, but coming back to a question you had a little bit ago, like about my background and how I come at these problems, it's thinking about how can the way that technology has connected us and is making things more efficient or easier or more discoverable in our lives, how can we apply that to some of the social sectors where technology maybe isn't penetrated quite as much?
Sure.
So in education, that was why I founded that company, and then with Generous carrying some of those learnings over.
Gotcha. I guess, Mike, what's the next question is what's next? What's the next industry? Where are you headed next?
What's next is Generous. We're growing this thing.
Yeah,
I mean, it's so exciting because for a lot of reasons. One is that we're getting to a place where it feels like America is irreparably fractured. Like everyone feels very disconnected and someone else is on the other side. But to me, it seems like nonprofits are a place where people can come together and put that stuff aside and actually just care about the community. Mm-hmm. Like when I'm volunteering at the food bank, I have no idea how the people around me voted, nor do I really care. We're, helping prepare the meals and box up goods and doing something directly for the community. And it's something where, you can come together and regardless of, policy and stuff happening at state and local and national levels, you can say, today I did a good thing. And that's, something really satisfying. So being able to help people discover that and find that in their communities and in their lives, especially when it feels like there's so much conflict outside of it, is just really good to do. Mm-hmm. And just, we are a business. From a business perspective, this is an enormous sector. It's a little shocking. Outside of like grocery and, general like retail spend, the second largest segment of consumer spending in America is charitable donations.
Is it?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
That's
crazy.
Yeah. $400 billion a year. And, I think Americans are generous. Mm-hmm. And I think Americans want to be generous. And, I guess when I come at it, it's thinking about, imagine that you're somebody who has, you're holding down a job, you've got a family, sure you have a mortgage to pay or whatever it is, but you are still going to take money out of your own pocket and help those in need. Mm-hmm. Like that person needs to be commended and applauded. And when that person gets to the point where they, are going to make that donation, it needs to be as easy and rewarding for that person as possible. So we get more people to that point. And then when you're at that point, fewer people are leaving because it's, I have to go on some nonprofit that hasn't updated their website in 30 years or, whatever it happens to be. And so for the people who get to that point, we just want to delight them and say, applaud them. Thank you for doing this. Mm-hmm. You are helping the world. Here's how you're helping the world. And let's, make it really, really simple for you to finish this transaction and hear back about the impact that you're having.
Sure. Technology, this, I may not even need to ask this, technology makes things so easy. Your developers and things have made things so easy. But, if I want to go donate, how do I do it?
Yeah.
On the generous platform.
On the generous platform, sure. Yeah, it depends how you want to donate. If you want to donate to a bundle or to a specific nonprofit, but you just go on, pick whatever you want to donate to. You can search for nonprofits. Right now, we've got about 150, 200 nonprofits in Nashville on the site. In about a month, we will have all nonprofits in the country on the site. So you'll be able to find anything you want to donate to.
You're already in other cities.
It's important, we think, to give people the opportunity to donate anywhere. So somebody who lives in Nashville, for example, may be from Los Angeles and want to support the Los Angeles Food Bank. Or someone from Nashville may want to support the work that the ACLU is doing. The ACLU is not headquartered in Nashville, but they work at a national level. And so we want to give people options and choices that are personally relevant to them. And we understand that not everything that's going to be personally relevant to somebody in Nashville is contained within city limits. But we're not yet at the point where we're doing active partnership brokering and other such things in other cities. So really focusing on Nashville. But you go to the site, search for whatever you want. We even have a quiz. It's kind of like a BuzzFeed style quiz. Someone can come in and take it and say, I'm interested in these types of nonprofits, and we'll help curate a list for you. Here are the organizations we think you'd be interested in. Learn a little bit about them. Click on the nonprofit, click donate. Fill out a short little transaction form, and you're done. The whole thing should take less than 5 minutes.
Awesome. And then for we obviously want to help. We want to help our nonprofits, our local nonprofits. How can the local nonprofits reach out and get connected?
Yeah. So nonprofits can go on the website. We have a little chat widget on the front page. Send us a message. Contact forms. You guys can reach out to me. I'll give you my contact info. Feel free to put it in the show notes or whatever. But yeah, I mean one thing I'll say about the nonprofit community in Nashville, having I've been really lucky in my career to have worked at the White House and at the Gates Foundation and just some amazing places. The nonprofit community in Nashville is amazing. Some of the leaders here are extraordinary people who are so inspirational. The folks who are volunteering and getting into the weeds of it every day it's really genuinely impressive. Nashville has a pretty large nonprofit sector. There's about 3,000 nonprofits in Nashville, and a lot of them are doing amazing work that's nationally and internationally recognized. The Shade Tree Clinic that I mentioned, the student-run free clinic at Vanderbilt, they're they're the only medical school student clinic in the country, or I think one of two or three, that has their model where the students are providing, more or less free and low-cost healthcare to people on the street who can't otherwise afford it. Souls for Souls, who are here in Nashville, they're in every DSW you walk into, you see their donation boxes, right? Yep. People don't know they're in Nashville because a lot of their work is international, but they're headquartered here.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, exactly.
I've lived here my whole life. I didn't know that.
They're one of the, and by revenue, I think they're one of, if you don't count Vanderbilt and some of the really large educational and the big the nonprofit hospitals and universities, I think Souls for Souls is one of the 5 biggest nonprofits in Nashville by revenue. Wow. They're internationally recognized, and no one knows that they're headquartered here. Thistle Farms is another one. You go into Whole Foods and you see their stuff, and I'm a Thistle Farmer bumper stickers on all sorts of things. And you'll see it outside of Nashville. Like amazing leaders and organizations doing great work here in the city. And so it's been such a joy to just meet with and work with these people and, be inspired by the work here. The other thing we do, which we didn't talk too much about, is marrying the corporate sector and corporate giving into what we're doing. I think a lot of companies are actually extraordinary philanthropists, and a lot of their philanthropy is underknown and under-recognized. Just as an example, there was a bank here in town, J.P. Morgan, who just opened their first retail branch, actually in Berry Hill.
Oh, okay.
3-4 months ago, or a little longer than that, they gave $250,000 to the Nashville Chamber of Commerce for an youth education and workforce development initiative. It's not really known it's a huge contribution. And so one thing that we're doing is working with companies who are making those contributions and saying, definitely still give money to the nonprofit and support them, but let's find a way for you as a company to get a little bit more mileage out of it, a little more recognition out of it, and also help the nonprofit get a little bit more mileage out of your donation. And that's where matching campaigns comes in.
Gotcha.
So if a company like that is going to give a check, we'll say, how can we help? How can the company and the nonprofit and Generous help market and advertise this opportunity, this matching opportunity to the community, so that the company is able to say, hey, we're supporting organizations in our community doing good work and that share your community values, that, you know, bank with us or buy from us or whatever. The nonprofit can say every dollar you give is actually helping, you know, create $2 of impact. And we as Generous, you know, again, we're not the doers, we're not the center of action, but we want to help coordinate that activity. And it's really exciting to think about how, you know, Nashville or Tennessee, you know, is the volunteer state, right? There's a rich history of innovation here in Nashville, and thinking about how we can apply that to the nonprofit sector and the way that corporations can fold in is something we're pretty excited about.
Absolutely. I guess the final thing would be, do you have any, and you've told a few things, are there any success stories that you have that are, you know, you've seen a nonprofit just, you know, explode, or, you know, any success stories that you have specific?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Nashville Holiday Giving Bundle that I mentioned was a great one. We had, I think that got a lot of donations coming into it, and a couple folks wrote into us about it afterward and said, hey, this is actually a really cool and unique way to give. I have an idea for another bundle that might be an interesting thing for you guys to try out. Or, you know, it feels, there was one lady who wrote and she said, you know, it feels really good that I'm able to help across Nashville. You know, she had said something about how she volunteers at the food bank, and that feels good, and she's able to have that impact. But she always wonders, you know, when the people leave, what happens to them. And so she gets to help across the whole city, and she was excited about that. So I think, you know, that's a really strong one. And, you know, there have been some other organizations and nonprofits who are able to talk to and promote to their lists and get some more donations coming through, in part because there is currently a match on Generous. You know, the first $25 anyone donates, we're going to match it to the nonprofit.
That's any donation?
Any donation to a nonprofit on the site, yeah.
To learn more about this episode, please visit musiccitygiving.co. That's musiccitygiving.co.